bonjour. Okay, not that many hours to go, and I'm so glad you're here because now we're going to have a really interesting panel. I always say this is my favorite, but it is my favorite because now we're really focusing on 2035. We've been focusing on 2050. We're getting closer, and I think this one, as you can see, is securing the crucial role of nuclear in the global energy mix. Apparently, there are other energy sources out there. But we need to focus now, once again, on nuclear, and we have some great speakers. But first of all, we have a great moderator. So let's give a warm hand to Maxence, Cordiez, Institut Montaigne, Hexana. Welcome up on stage. Give him a warm hand. Looking forward to listening now.
Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce this session with Dr. Hashemian, who is chairman and CEO for AMS, and also the chairman of the American Nuclear Society. Please welcome Dr. Hashemian. Then we have Dr. Michel Berthelemy, who is chief of staff and senior advisor of the OECD NEA, Nuclear Energy Agency. Pierre Gavoille, head of the SMR program of the French Atomic Energy and Alternative Energies Commission, the CEA. Dr. Vincent Berger, who is the French High Commissioner for Nuclear Energy. And John Adams, who is Chief Engineer for Rolls-Royce AMR. Please welcome John Adams. So welcome everybody. Today, nuclear energy is at a crossroads. Of course, we need to accelerate decarbonization because of the climate change challenge. And we also need to get rid of fossil fuels for energy security purposes. It's a huge challenge. 80% of our energy globally comes from fossil fuels. And even in France, where we have a huge share of nuclear energy is only 70% of the electricity. It means 18% of the energy we use. So most energy, even in France, comes from fossil fuels. So to get rid of fossil fuels is a very huge challenge. And we'll need all the tools. And there is a huge challenge in the coming decades for nuclear energy to help decarbonize, of course, electricity, but also heat and produce low-carbon fuels, whether liquid and gaseous fuel. Nuclear energy is a long-term industry that has to be planned for a long time before. We need to anticipate on what we can do on the short and medium term, let's say to 2035, is not what we can do afterward on a longer term. And the purpose of this roundtable will be mostly to discuss what we can do on a short, medium time range, let's say to until 2035, and maybe give some insight also about what we can do afterwards. Please, Michel, could you introduce maybe the topic by focusing on your view, on the view of the Nuclear Energy Agency, of the prospects for nuclear energy in all the countries you follow at the OECD, and all those prospects to 2035.
Well, thank you very much, Maxence, and it's a pleasure to be with you all today for this panel. It's my third time at WNE, and the great thing by coming at WNE is that you can really feel the heartbeat of the nuclear industry, and I think we all agree here today that the energy there has been and the momentum there has been over the last 3 days at WNE is really a testament to the renewed momentum for nuclear energy globally. And I wanted to start by outlining what we see at the OECD nuclear energy as some of the key structural drivers toward this renewed momentum. And we will not use the word renaissance, but maybe there is revival of nuclear energy. The first one, and I think you've outlined that very well, Maxence, has been around climate change. Climate change is really started at COP26 in Glasgow, when countries moved from talking about climate commitments to talking about implementation, and things become much more concrete. And then, of course, at COP28, we had this declaration on tripling nuclear energy 2 years ago, and which again, was the first time that in global climate negotiation there was an explicit recognition that nuclear energy was part of the solution, and a very strong signal by world leaders, and this was largely based on some analysis we did at the WNE a couple of years prior to that. But the really bigger shift that is happening and drivers for nuclear energy is, of course, today energy security, and the war in Ukraine has really moved this conversation from being something which had become a little bit of a theoretical exercise for some countries, particularly OECD countries, to something very real. And that really changes everything. That really changes the way people see their energy priorities, and it also then becomes a much more credible signal that countries are going to be going to follow up on the ambitions when it comes to nuclear energy as part of the solutions toward strengthening security of energy supply. And the last but not least is around, and that's, I think, a bit of a shift compared to the last WNE, is the new demand signals. From hyperscalers, from tech companies, from heavy industries. I think several were here at WNE over the last couple of days. And these are not only just signal for new demand, but these are also customers that very clearly underline that they see value in nuclear energy. And so that plays to the fact that there is an increasing recognition by these players that nuclear energy is part of the solution, and that there has to be a mix between different sources of energy, and that renewables will get us to, will help us to get along the way, but at some point nuclear has a role to play if we want to deliver on our energy and climate objectives. Now, the question now is particularly for the OECD countries, is about the how. How do we implement that? One thing we've done at the WNE over the last 3 years has been to convene a ministerial conference that we call Roadmap to Nuclear. And we started to do that because it became very clear to us that whilst, country, for instance, China has a very clear path forward when it comes to nuclear energy and has not stopped building nuclear power plants over the last decade or so, the situation is very different when it comes to OECD countries, where in many cases supply chain capabilities have been lost because no nuclear power plant have been built for decades, and where also the nuclear industry had in many cases been divested and restructured, and the situation, the industrial landscape had to be rebuilt, and also couldn't be rebuilt in the same way that it was in the 70s when we first built nuclear power plants. And from this convening, there's a few key points that I wanted to underline today, which I think will speak to how we see the situation moving for OECD countries. My first observation is that we see that today policymakers and industry are really much, I think I'd call them in lockstep together, on delivering the near-term objectives to rebuild capabilities and leadership in nuclear new build, and we see very strong alignment there. The second is about what the supply chain is doing. And I think I want to have a bit of a positive message here on optimistic message on the fact that we see really the supply chain taking very good steps to rebuild the supply chain capability, to make sure that lessons from first of a kind have been learned, to improve performance, to embrace innovation, new technologies, the advance of AI as a means to deliver nuclear power plants on cost and on time. And there has been many examples over the last 3 days of new initiatives, new partnerships, new announcements that really plays to that part. My third observation is around financing, which we talked about financing on the panel yesterday.
So I won't repeat everything that was said, but a couple of quick points. First, we see that private capital is now ready to engage with nuclear energy, providing the right frameworks in place. And we also see that some of the key players that are going to have to play a role, and I'm thinking, for instance, the role of multilateral development banks, are starting to be much more open to nuclear energy. And this is going to really change and help to move things faster to unlock public-private partnerships. And the last but not least observation is about the new demand signals. Whilst beyond everything I've said already, what's interesting about them is that they bring not only customers and contracts, but also new business models, sometimes new delivery models because of the requirements as customers, and sometimes also just a fresh perspective to do nuclear energy. Some of them operate in an environment where they're used to multi-billion capex expenditures, and sometimes investments in nuclear power plant doesn't really scare them because it's equivalent to what they already do. So I think this is really key and transformational trends for the nuclear industry. So far, I haven't really talked about the technology pipeline, and I think it'd be interesting to discuss with the panel how we see SMR vis-à-vis large-scale reactors. When it comes to SMR, of course, I encourage all of you, if you haven't done it already, to look at the NE SMR dashboard, which we really see as a good entry point to really understand the global landscapes when it comes to moving SMR toward first-of-a-kind deployment. And this publication, which is now in its third edition, we see really, from the last edition we published a couple of months ago, that things are accelerating and moving at pace. But the point I wanted to underline on the technology pipeline is, and it's a simple point, but I do have to underline it, is that it's not about SMR versus large scale, and that we really see that when it comes to the pipeline of technologies, there is clearly a role for large scale, and there's clearly a role for SMR, as they do not compete. Maybe I think I'm about to hit my time limit, so let me very brief in a couple of concluding thoughts before opening to the other panelists on what we see in terms of how much deployment there is ahead of us. I think we'll talk about LTO later on, but I think it's important to look, when we look at the global picture, we see still today that there is about 65 gigawatt of reactors under construction, but half of them are in China. So it's a question for OECD countries. And in particular, when we add in addition to that reactors that are planned, we get to about 150 gigawatts that get us to 2035, bring it back to the topic of the panel. And these 150 gigawatts, 3/4 of them are going to be built in or expected to be built in non-OECD countries. And so there is clearly a shift that is going to happen as we go to 2035, where non-OECD countries play a bigger role. And so this is something that we're going to have to navigate as we move forward. Maybe one last point is that in this discussion, and while this is not the topic of the panel, we should not forget about the nuclear fuel cycle, because this revival of nuclear new build and this new nuclear capacity are going to have to be supported by investments along the nuclear fuel cycle, from the front end to the back end. And there, I think the picture is very clear that OECD countries are taking very concrete steps. And I think Jacques earlier with the Rhino and our partners from Kazakhstan shows the way forward. So with that, I will stop now and hand the floor back to you, Maxence.
Thank you very much, Michel. Of course, we will speak about SMR on AMRs in the second part of this panel. But now I turn to you, Dr. Hashemian. You are the chairman of the American Nuclear Society. There is a huge momentum today in the US regarding nuclear, new nuclear, current nuclear, but beyond SMRs and AMRs, which are very dynamic in the US, we know that the cheapest nuclear production is from existing reactors, long-term operation. But with the competition of gas, which is pretty cheap in the US, how do you see long-term operation programs developing in the US? Do you think that all operators will be opting for long-term operation? And if so, what performance improvement programs do you see implemented for those nuclear power plants? I mean, increased power, optimized maintenance, etc.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that question, and thank you all for listening. So you can build that's a very good question. You can build a gas plant today for 1,000 megawatt in the United States for less than $2 billion. And we are doing that. But if you want to build a nuclear power plant for 1,000 megawatt in the United States, it's going to cost you $15 billion. But we are going to do it. And the reason we are going to do it is several. One of which is diversity of energy supplies, energy security. Michel talked about that. And also, of course, the benefits to the environment. That was a fundamental, but things have been added to the reason why we are deploying nuclear power plants in the United States. We used to have about 100 nuclear power plants till about 10 years ago. We were operating 100 nuclear power plants in the United States, generating 20% of our electricity. 10 years ago, we were talking about shutting them down and go down to probably 50 nuclear power plants, right? In the last 5 years, things have completely changed. We are now talking about building 400 nuclear power plants in the United States by 2050. 10 of them are going to start being built. I've always promoted the idea, and I was talking to Michel earlier about the US government having to step in and get this off the ground. US government has been slow until recently. Tax subsidies, we just heard last week that the US government is putting $80 billion out to subsidize the building of 10 AP1000 reactors within the next 10 years in the United States. So a lot is happening in the US toward the deployment of new nuclear. The existing one, what we are doing with the existing one, first of all, we are operating them. For example, Turkey Point Nuclear Power Plant in Florida spent about $3 billion to operate their plants. That $3 billion resulted in 500 megawatt of electricity. If you try to produce that out of a nuclear power plant, you are going to probably spend 3 times that. So operating is going to be the name of the game. We are going to extend the life of the plant. So in the United States, the law is this. You operate a nuclear power plant under the law for 40 years. But the law allows you to extend that to 60 and 80 and beyond 80. So almost all the US plants, about 95 of them, are going to be doing what we call life extension from 40 to 60. And then 8 of them today have applied to go from 60 to 80. We call it subsequent license renewal, SLR. So that's what's happening. Now, we are operating both small projects, a couple of $1 million, to make better measurement of feed water flow. In pressurized water reactor, which is a major source of nuclear energy in the United States, there is an issue with measurement of feed water flow in the secondary system of nuclear plants. Now, it's called Venturi flow. I'm an instrumentation and control guy, so I know these things very well. So as the flow error increases, the power reduces in the plant. So what you can do is to measure that with ultrasonic flow sensors and save 2% power. That's a small investment of $1 million that can give you 2%. But there are other things you can do to increase the power by 10 to 20%. Basically, we are going to operate most of our plants and get between 10 to 20% more electricity out of them at the cost of about 3 or 4 times less than building a new nuclear power plant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all those elements. And indeed, the US have been a precursor in this increase of performance and increase of power of nuclear power plants. I turn to you, Dr. Berger. In France, major work is currently underway to extend the life of nuclear reactor from 40 years to 50 years. What other steps is the French operator EDF taking to prepare the future and to increase the performance of its nuclear power plants?
Thank you very much. Yes, in France, we want to increase the performance of the nuclear production because, as you said in the introduction, we expect a future increase of the demand for electricity. And it's necessary for decarbonization since in our country, electricity is already decarbonized. We want now to share, to increase the share of the electricity mix in the global energy mix. So it means increase the electricity, and it's good for decarbonization, but it's also good for our trade balance. Nevertheless, we need to go not too fast. We need to do that at the right rate, because at the same time, in France, we have a situation of oversupply for the next 5 years, and we have spot prices who can go to zero and even negative during the day. And this is a problem because it costs a lot of money for the taxpayer and for the consumer. And so investments today can be stranded assets until the demand is not growing. So we have to find the right rate. So to answer to your question, how can we increase the performance of our fleet? There are several ways. First, at short term, we can improve the industrial control of reactor shutdowns, and this can lead to the increase of the availability of the reactor. And EDF is working on that with this purpose to have a better energy availability factor of our reactors. Second point, EDF is also working to extend the operating cycles of the 900 megawatts reactors from 12 months to 16 months, and this also will improve the availability of reactors. EDF is also working to improve the power, so uprating the existing reactors by changing the turbines. For example, on a 900 megawatts, you can increase if you change the turbine with Arabelle, which are very, very nice turbines. You can improve the power by 30 to 40 megawatts, and which is not negligible since we have 22 900 megawatts reactors in France. As a longer term, as you said, we have long-term operation, so working on 50 years, but next 60 years and even 80 years, maybe more, but not yet, but we are working on this. And for this, aging of the nuclear power plant reactor vessel steel is a key issue. And this is studied by EDF in an excellent laboratory in Chinon. I visited that 2 weeks ago. And also with the Atomic Energy Commission, they are looking carefully with excellent characterization experiments on the vessel steel. We have also subjects on the E-bands in nuclear reactors that are pipes that are welded directly on the reactor vessel, and this will also be an issue. Of course, we have also the construction of new nuclear reactors, the EPR2, everybody knows, and the government has programmed 6 EPR2 to be built in the next 15 years. We have also investments in the fuel cycle, and you can go to the here at the booth of Orano to see the model of the future LAAC plants with new box plant and a new reprocessing plant. And for the very long term, we have the purpose to close the nuclear fuel cycle, but it's a very long term, and I don't think it's probably beyond your question. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe just a last question on current reactors to Dr. Hashemian. We can read a lot of papers regarding the restart of nuclear power plants in the US. I'm thinking about the first reactor, 3 Mile Island, with a deal with Microsoft on Constellation, Palisades power plant. What is the current status of these restarts? And very quickly, what are the main difficulties encountered by the operators to restart those plants?
Thank you for that question. So we are restarting 3 nuclear power plants in the United States. There is going to be more of the shutdown plants to be restarted. But today, 3 has been already announced. The first one is called Palisades, a nuclear power plant in Michigan. That plant is a pressurized water reactor by combustion engineering that operated from 1971 to 2022. It was shut down due to economic reasons. All the plants that were shut down were mostly due to economical reasons. That will be back online next year. It was supposed to be the end of this year. So that project is going very well. It's done by a private company called Holtec that is in the business of decommissioning of nuclear power plant and storage of nuclear spent fuel. Private company by Chris Singh and one owner. And then the second plant that's under consideration for restart due to the investment of $2 billion by Microsoft is 3 Mile Island Unit 1. As you all know, 3 Mile Island Unit 2 was one of the 3 major accidents nuclear accidents in the world that happened in 1979. That's the same site, but it's the other unit, not the Unit 2. Unit 2 is the one that has a Babcock's and Wilcox pressurized water reactor that started in 1974, operated to 2019, and is due to be coming back online by 2028 at the cost of $2 billion for about an 850 megawatt nuclear power plant, which is a great deal. The next one is a boiling water reactor. It's a different type in Iowa called Duane Arnold. That was just announced as another nuclear power plant to be going online. The problems you mentioned about extending or bringing these plants or extending the life is aging management of critical equipment, which is concrete, metal, and polymers. I happen to work on the polymer area, so I'll speak a little bit about that. Nuclear power plants have about 10,000 miles of cables. Not all of them are safety related, but the safety related ones have to be either replaced or you have to demonstrate that they are good. There are technologies that have been developed by my company and others that is being looked at by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for extending the life of cables, equipment qualified cables, safety. If you can do that, which is very possible, you can save a lot of money on cables because cable replacement is very expensive, $1 million cable. So that's one thing being done. The other thing is there is a lot of research on aging of materials such as concrete and national laboratories are doing, and also metallic stuff. Predictive maintenance, a lot of things are being done to preserve the life of the existing and also restart the shutdown nuclear power plant. So 3 are going, we are thinking about 8 of them are going to come back online that were shut down originally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now maybe let's turn our attention to new nuclear, especially SMRs and AMRs, which are drawing a lot of attention and a great deal of interest around the world. I turn to you, Mr. Pierre Gavoille. It's your specialty on your job at CEA to plan for the programs regarding SMRs and AMRs. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the challenges, the timelines, and the technologies involved when we speak about SMRs and AMRs?
Thanks, Maxence, for the question, and very happy to be here with the other panelists to talk about SMRs, which is also a great way to do new nuclear in France and abroad. And I think warming the booths at the WNE, we can see a lot of new technological promises given by these developments. So I will start maybe with the technologies, because from the technologies we derive the timelines and also maybe the challenges. What is really striking for me is that, so you have mainly 2 families, I would say. The first one being the Gen 2, Gen 3 reactors, which we all know and which are in service for a long time now in the fleets at different countries. And then the promises given by the Gen 4 reactors with a lot of diverse concepts. What is striking for me for the Gen 2, Gen 3 reactors is you really have a wide variety of designs. Some of them closely resembles the large-scale power plants with the goal to go as fast as possible toward industrialization and really optimizing the time to markets. And so having also a kind of precocious approach on design to lighten the challenges related to other aspects of the SMR business, such as the business models, the series production, and so on. But at the same time, you also have other kinds of light water reactors, which are devoted to other uses of nuclear. And you mentioned the case of France at the beginning of the talk, that we already have a lot of electricity which is decarbonized, but we have a great challenge with heat production, which is quite heavily fossilized in France, as is in other countries of the world. So, and using these already really well-established technologies, new developers are also aiming at delivering decarbonized heat with this proven technology of Gen 2, Gen 3 reactors. So this is a very positive sign that we are also revisiting proven concepts for new applications of nuclear at the same time as really speeding up using proven designs to produce electricity with small reactors of the light water types, be it pressurized water reactor or boiling water reactor types. And then you have the other families, which are the Gen 4 reactors, with a very diverse environment. We have sodium fast reactors, lead fast reactors, with molten salt reactors and high temperature reactors. So really the whole spectrum of technologies which were thought of in the Gen 4 family are represented in the AMR types. So this is also a sign of the vitality of the market and of the designers. And one of the key points I want to stress is that when we are considering new nuclear and the way forward to 2035, which means having to speed up with these concepts, is that we have to consider both the reactor and the fuel together. And this is really important that we, right from the design, we envision the fuel cycle going with the Gen 4 concepts, which is being more and more done by the designers. So this is a good sign. And also with these technologies, I think it's also a great way to serve the multi-purpose nuclear by providing high temperature heat, by coupling with the energy demanding industries, petrochemicals for the production of e-fuels, for the production of hydrogen, for example, and to approach new markets. So, of course, for these technologies, there are some technical challenges. We have some experience with some of these concepts from the past, in France in particular, with sodium fast reactors, other countries with lead, so we must really take benefit from the existing experience, but at the same time, just as what is being done for the Gen 2, Gen 3 reactors, also maybe revisit some of the concepts to look for new ways to put these concepts into use. And also, this will require work from the safety authorities, from the regulators, to accompany these new developments toward the market. So that's for maybe the landscape on technologies. So then, what are the challenges associated with different technologies? So there are some technical challenges, and maybe the first one related to the SMR nature is to simplify and adapt the design to the series production. It's both a challenge for the existing technology and also for the Gen 4 technology. Really, if we want to make it fly on the economical way, we have to adapt and take these constraints of series production, prefabrication, certifying at the shop and not on the site to heart, right from the design, to be able to deliver something which is economically viable and really takes full advantage of the series production. That's a big challenge, I think, from the designers. Also, there's the challenge related to the licensing, because being a series business by nature, you have this multiple licensing in different countries. I think lots of initiatives have been run now of pre-licensing between different groups of interested countries. So that is going also at a higher pace now. And I think more and more countries are gathering up to pre-license it, some designs. So this is also something which is gathering pace. Another type of challenges is to make these new uses come to life. I mean, there are demands from the industry, but we have to bridge the gap between the nuclear offer and the demand from the industry. That implies thinking about new business models, which has been also already mentioned by Michel in this talk. Also, the financing parts. How are we going to have the financing schemes for these new uses, and to make it also acceptable in different siting configurations, because people are used to have maybe a large-scale nuclear a bit far away from cities or from industrial areas. We need to make it closer to industries, closer maybe to urban area, to explain to the people what benefit they can derive from having, for example, low carbon heat for their homes, low carbon heat and electricity for the industry close to them. And so that's also a challenge to make it happen in any countries, really. And that's my last point regarding the challenges. We have also this challenge of public engagement and public, so that the people understand, but also that we gather interest among the people to come to the nuclear business, because we have a challenge of manpower. I think it's really striking when you would talk with a lot of countries that they always mention the same challenges of having people come to the nuclear business to keep up the pace of generation and building and having the supply chain, having enough people in the supply chain in the operation business. So this is also a big challenge, which is maybe not at the forefront of the challenges which are being cited, but this is really a crucial thing, I think, if we want to keep at the pace and be there in 2035. And the last part regarding the timeline, I think some of the timelines will depend on the technology. So obviously for the Gen 4 reactors, we have a development path which may dictate the timelines. For the Gen 2, Gen 3 reactors, it's more about setting up the supply chain and setting up the series. There is a bit of a chicken and egg problem with developing the fork and then waiting for a pre-order book before we move to the facilities which will make the modules. So the pace at which we will switch to this series production is also a critical factor in my mind to have a short timeline. And then there are the issues with the fuel, especially for the Gen 4 reactors, because most often fuel strategy is derived at the state level and may not be on the same pace as would be wished by the AMRs developers. So there's a bridge to be also narrowed between the two timelines if you want to make it happen in a short term. And then the licensing. So I think really there is some jobs to be made both for the Gen 2, Gen 3 reactors, because we are talking about new configurations. There's a lot of interest in maritime, for example, applications. At the moment, some people are talking about nuclear ships or having PWRs maybe close to ports or to cities. These are new siting configurations. This may require new licensing questions. And of course, for the Gen 4 technologies, there's a lot of field to investigate for the regulators to assess the safety of these new concepts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre Gavoille. Let's talk about a concrete example. Rolls-Royce is at the forefront of the civilian nuclear industry in the United Kingdom, with both an SMR project and an AMR project, which is a high-temperature reactor. Please, John Adams, could you tell us more about your HCR project, and how do you see the future in terms of market, and particularly the timeline on the financing Pierre spoke about, especially for your first of a kind regarding this AMR?
Certainly, thank you for the question. Rolls-Royce, we've been developing our advanced modular reactor for the last 5 years now. And in the early phases of that, we spent a lot of time really evaluating all of the different Gen 4 technologies, as well as evaluating the market as a whole to understand that opportunity. And one of the things we've identified during that phase was just how much the market has evolved just in that period of time in terms of what our end customers are looking for, the types of power demand, the types of application, and the way they see these products being used in the future. We also are cognizant of our existing nuclear portfolio. So Rolls-Royce has the Rolls-Royce small modular reactor, which is a 470 megawatt pressurized water reactor for grid scale applications. And we wanted our advanced modular reactor to be a complementary product to our existing portfolio. So focused its application on up to 25 megawatts electric or 75 megawatts thermal for heat and power provision, but focusing on off-grid applications for things like critical national infrastructure, remote mining, remote communities, and data centers. We chose a high-temperature gas-cooled reactor as our technology of choice to meet those market ambitions. And why HTGRs for Rolls-Royce? Well, first and foremost, the UK has a real extensive history in gas-cooled reactors. We have a lot of capability and experience, and a great example of that is with UK National Nuclear Laboratory. They are working closely with the Japanese Atomic Energy Association on developing high-temperature gas-cooled reactor technology for the UK. Another key facet of high-temperature gas-cooled reactors that particularly play into the strengths of Rolls-Royce is the high temperatures at which they operate. That really brings in the power conversion technology, a Brayton cycle power conversion technology, so using gas turbines, another one of Rolls-Royce's world-leading expertise, to really drive high efficiency in the power conversion. So in terms of the status of our program at the minute, we've got a concept design for our reactor, and we'll be moving into detailed design in due course. In parallel to that, we've been really looking at the supply chain, and it's been mentioned previously on the panel that the key aspects of the supply chain to enable this technology to come to bear on the timeframes we want it to is going to be around the fuel. And particularly pleasing in the UK, we have a program for enrichment to HALEU levels, and we have capability with the UK National Nuclear Laboratory to develop coated particle fuel. So setting up that domestic fuel supply chain to support a fleet of advanced modular reactors in the future. Alongside that, we've been really looking at the delivery model for how this technology comes to bear. The sorts of customers and the sorts of applications often are non-traditional nuclear customers. So really looking at the path that our colleagues at Rolls-Royce SMR have set by providing a whole power station solution, so that this can be delivered as a project to a set of end customers. And finally, in the delivery of this in the UK, we're very much looking forward to hearing more information on the advanced nuclear technology framework that's to be announced by the UK government. That will be the pathway to both access regulation and financing for these nuclear projects in the UK for AMR deployment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Berger, in France, the France 2030 program led to the creation of several startups developing SMRs and AMRs. You have PWRs, sodium cooled fast neutron reactors, lead cooled fast neutron reactors, HTR, MSR. You even have fusion reactors. I myself work in one of those companies. What will be the next step of this program, and what kind of support the French state gives to those startups, and what is the end goal aimed by the French government?
Yes, the government has funded some startups that develop innovative nuclear solutions, and as you said, with many different technologies. I must add that these investments were done together with private investors, not only the government. And this is important. This is a key issue, since the time expected for a return on investment are not the same for private investors than for a government. So we have 11 startups that have been funded. Another which is coming, and we have also another SMR, a new word, but which is developed by EDF, which is not exactly a startup. And so these many technologies, this reflects the creativity of French engineers, and this comes from the history of the Atomic Energy Commission, and so this is very nice to see all of these ideas and these rich experimental realizations. So typically, as a first phase, the government has funded with 10 million euros, typically the startups and private investors have bid up these investments. But of course, we will not build 12 reactors in France. It would not be reasonable. So we have to select now. We have to select in a second phase, and to choose a few projects that will be funded again with a bit more money. And the idea is to select, I don't know, 4 to 5 of them in a second phase, to concentrate also the efforts of the investors, and also to concentrate the human resources, which is a very important issue. So, as you said before, we have different projects with some projects with low temperature heat for urban heating or industrial heating. We have also higher temperature reactors for 450 degrees or 700 degrees for industrial uses. We have also 6 4th-generation reactors with solid fuels or with molten salt fuels. And we have also 2 fusion reactors with sterrator confinement or with inertial confinement. So with these 12 solutions, we can have something like 9 different fuels. So this is very a nice zoo of different solutions. So what will be the criteria for France 2030 to select the projects for the next phase? First of all, the business plan and the potential market, of course, are important, even if it's the government. This is important because this is done together with investors, private investors. And it depends, of course, for example, of the output temperature for heat generation. It's not the same market and not the same business plan. Second, among the key success for the keys to success for a startup, of course, the quality of the team is important. This is the case in every field, not only the nuclear. The quality of the team is important to choose the best project. Third, the technology of the reactor is important because it will determine the cost of the reactor, but also, and this is probably a point that has been underestimated by, or maybe not enough considered by the investors, it will determine the time for development. Because the qualification by the safety authorities, it takes time. If you have new materials, new devices, new technologies, new processes, it's time. It translates into time for qualification. And this is very important, especially for those who are expecting return of investment. Last but not least, the fuel. It may be the most important. Most investors and designers of reactors have considered that the reactor was important because you show something nice and the support will follow. But in fact, you can also see things the other way around. That is, what is the fuel you can have, and then you will design a reactor. And this is very important. And this may be the main bottleneck for the success of the different startups. As I said, among the 11 projects, we have 9 different fuels. And you can roughly, because I have not a lot of time, share it between three typical different fuels. You have the startups, the projects which use classical fuel, I would say EDF fuel in France, where, of course, it's simpler because all the supply chain, all the system is already here on the table. You have startups on the other way around, I would say, which are working on fusion. And I would say that on fusion, they are not talking a lot about that, but the tritium cycle inside the reactor is not easy. This has never been demonstrated. It's one of the purposes of ITER, but you know, this is probably the Everest of this project, and I won't say more about this. And for Gen 4 reactors, they will have issues concerning the fuel that are availability as a function of time, the price, sometimes also the risk of proliferation concerning plutonium, and this is a huge issue with intergovernmental agreements, and with also the quantity of plutonium you can have as a function of time, which will determine the number of reactors you can deploy as a function of time. And this has to be injected in the business plan, and this is not yet done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A very quick question, John Adams. Dr. Berger spoke about qualification, and actually a difficulty of SMRs and AMRs is the lack of international common safety standards, and it's a huge difficulty that all SMR and AMRs projects have to tackle. What approach have you taken at Rolls-Royce to address this issue?
Thank you. Yeah. When you think about the global demand for SMRs and AMRs, the importance of a common approach to safety standards, it really can't be understated. And this is no more true than for our own Rolls-Royce AMR we're developing. We're developing this to produce secure, reliable heat and power for a range of off-grid applications. And this requires a different approach to regulation. One that gives credit to the passive safety features associated with Gen 4 reactors, but also recognises the ambition to license, install and commission these type of reactors on a much quicker timescale. We're aiming to do this within 6 months on a site, and at a rate that enables us to meet the customer demand and the global demand for decarbonisation targets. And it's in these efforts and in this regard that we are really taking close interest in the work that's being done in the UK by the Nuclear Regulatory Task Force, where both the regulation of civil and defence nuclear is under examination. And the aim of this task force is to explore how all aspects of regulation, be that safety, environmental, planning, can be improved to support a journey to decarbonisation, but also energy security, national security, and economic growth in the UK. There are a couple of areas of this particular review that we're paying close interest to. One is around innovation and new nuclear, exploring how the current regulations support and enable new nuclear technologies and also novel applications of nuclear technology. Also on the industrial harmonisation strand, where the task force are looking at how they can enable quicker exchanges of technologies between advanced nuclear states, as well as how we can take credit for how these technologies have been regulated in other regimes. And speaking on that international collaboration front, the trilateral agreement between the UK ONR, the NRC in the US, and the NSC in Canada is a great example of how the regulators are working together with intention to streamline, simplify, and standardise across nuclear regulation. At Rolls-Royce, we have, with our SMR project, again, leading the way in the UK in terms of trying to bring together international collaboration on regulation. Our Rolls-Royce SMR project has 5 other countries observing its design assessment process that's being undertaken with the ONR in the UK. And we work closely on the Advanced Modular Reactor project with our SMR colleagues who are really ahead of us on the journey from a regulation standpoint, but paving the way for a lot of standardization and international collaboration. When it comes to a common set of safety standards, the IAA already provide a really good set of internationally recognized relevant good practice safety standards. There will be work to do where there's no such precedent been set for some novel applications, such as commercial maritime in future, or novel technologies, e.g. molten salt reactors. And it's always difficult to make a truly set of common standards given the range of technologies and a growing range of applications. However, the IAA provide an excellent starting point that gets you a good long way there. And to close this gap, the way forward is all around closer collaboration between regulators. And I'm really pleased to see that this is ongoing, as I've discussed earlier. In particular, Rolls-Royce are engaging with the IAEA Nuclear Harmonisation and Standardisation Initiative. We're doing this via their multinational pre-licensing joint regulatory review process, and making progress in that regard. In summary, I'd say collaboration is key in terms of standardising and moving forward. There are a lot of challenges to deploying advanced nuclear at a global scale, and safety always has to be paramount in that. It's a key feature of our industry, and collaboration and working together to standardize will be a key way of enabling that in the future.
Thank you very much. Maybe a last question regarding regulation to you, Dr. Hashemian. President Trump passed 2 executive orders changing the status of the NRC in the US to make it more easy for SMRs on AMRs project to come online. So do you think it could have an impact on the export of such technologies in other countries where the regulations are maybe in a way more stringent than in the US? Do you think that it could have an impact on the business for the US regarding nuclear energy?
Thank you for asking. I was surprised you asked that question. So I come from America, so I'm biased, but the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of the United States is known as the gold standard of nuclear regulation. And they really deserve that. I've worked with them for years. 3,000 to 4,000 people work there. President of the United States is not trying to water down the safety of nuclear plants in the United States and the world. What he's trying to do with all the agencies of the United States is to bring technology to get efficiency improvement and reduce paperwork and bureaucracy, not the safety. I can assure you that the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission is going to be as good as it has always been, and will be even better under the new administration, because there is a lot of emphasis in deployment of nuclear energy in a very safe manner. So no one should ever doubt that the United States will water down the safety of nuclear power plant and water down the power of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to oversee the safety of nuclear plants in the United States. With respect to export, we are doing a lot to make sure that the world is aware of all the technologies that are being developed in the United States toward SMRs. I have some problems with 120 SMRs being talked about. There's a lot of hype there, so we got to be careful about that. So I think that we are going to go down to probably 5 SMR and maybe 5 AMR together, less than 10 designed, but there's 120, which is a problem in my opinion, because it's taking a lot of resources away from the ones that really have a great chance of getting deployed. The United States is very active in export of nuclear technologies. We are selling three AP1000 reactors to Poland. 16 SMR by General Electric is on the discussions to be sold to Poland. Romania and NuScale has been talking about SMR purchase from the United States for the last 10 years. The problem there is financing, problems in other places that are looking to deploy American SMRs or financing. We in the United States, through the Department of Commerce, we have an advisory committee. I was a member of that is charged by making the export of nuclear technology of the United States easier. We have a problem in the US with export of nuclear technology that's called export control, because We are worried about copying of nuclear technology of the United States and using it for purposes besides generating power. The new government under President Trump is streamlining the requirement for export control, which would make it, while safe, but make it easier to sell American nuclear power plants in other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are reaching the end of our roundtable, so it's time maybe for some concluding remarks. I will give you 1 minute, let's say, to every one of you. What is your view of what nuclear could be in 2035? What technologies do you see online in 2035? What changes do you see? Maybe I'll begin with you, Michel Barthélemy, if you can.
Thank you, Maxence, and maybe reflecting on what we've heard, and I think I shared my view about what technology we see by 2035, but I want to underline a couple of points about how do we get there. And first, I think to emphasize that we will get there only, particularly for OECD countries, if we really maintain strong coordination and cooperation between government, industry, and other stakeholders, particularly from the finance sector. And it's important to recall that when we first built the current nuclear fleet, particular international cooperation was very central for us to achieve the level of deployment we did back in those days. And of course, the landscape has changed dramatically, and it won't be the same. But keeping in mind that international cooperation, alignment among countries is really essential if we are to collectively achieve our objectives. My second observation is sort of have to walk before you can run, and important to address the different timelines here, and to keep in mind that there are the next of a kind reactors, and it's important to get them built. And it's important to manage, to some extent, expectations, to be aware that it is sometimes going to be changing, but that when these plans are completed or commissioned, they set a path toward a more rapid expansion. And then that's my last point, is that we also need to start thinking about the scaling up, particularly after 2035. And this is going to go beyond just ramping up supply chain capabilities. Of course, we're going to need, more forges, all of this stuff, more workforce. But we're also probably going to need new delivery models, moving from the traditional EPC delivery models, in particular, if the advance of SMR kind of made the promise that they've set. So I think this is really going to be central. And again, collaboration collectively is going to be an important part of that.
Thank you very much, Michel Barthélemy. John Adams, do you agree with what Michel just told on what is your view for nuclear in 2035?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, you look at the challenges we have as a global community to decarbonize in the future, and we look at the growing energy demands. Hopefully by 2045, we're seeing a real ramp up of new nuclear products, both from conventional nuclear but also advanced nuclear, being deployed across the world. Because if we are, then it means we're making great progress against some of our climate change targets. To do that, there's still a lot of work to do. There's a lot of collaboration needed, and really everybody could be working at this together and still be behind in the challenge. So I think more than ever, it's the time to look at a common goal for the world and work together to achieve that across the industry.
Thank you very much. And you, Pierre?
Yeah, I think pretty much as what has already been said is that we need to team up, because we are going to need a lot of people coming together. There's a lot of technical challenges, human challenges, regulatory challenges, and so we cannot just do it on your own. So really teaming up is I think is a key word. And also we don't need to forsake the near future for the longer future. We need to take everything that is LTO, improving the performance of the large-scale reactors, developing the light water type SMRs, and also keep the pace on the Gen 4 reactors. We will not see everything by 2035, but we have to start now if we want to be there in 2035 for some project, but also in 2050 maybe or 40 for the Gen 4 reactors. We need really to streamline everything as much as we possibly can and to go together to work on these different streamlines together.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hashemian, is it something with which you agree?
For 2020, so in the Western world, my hope and estimate is that we will have hyperside, and this is only in the West, Europe, America, China not included. I think and hope that we will have 5 to 10 water-cooled SMRs operating by 2035, and 2 or 3 AMRs, non-water-cooled reactors, liquid metal reactors, and 10 to 20 big reactor, AP1000 of America and French reactors and others. So that's what my best estimate for 2035 is. I hope everybody beats this estimate, but that's what I think will happen over the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Berger, the last word will be yours.
Thank you. I think probably the most important point about the success of SMRs is really the regulation authorities. It's really the point, because SMR cannot succeed in one country only, in Europe. Maybe in the US, which is a large country, but it's not possible. So, and they cannot do a fork every time they change from country. So it's really important. And as far as regulation is concerned, we all have the same issues. We want to protect the population and to protect the environment. If we have the same issues, we should be able to find the same rules. And for SMRs, it's mandatory, so we have to cooperate. Thank you. 11 seconds.
Thank you very much. So we have reached the end of our roundtable. Thank you very much to all of you, and I think we can thank also all our panelists. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for a great panel, great discussion, and excellent moderation. We will, in 15 minutes, dig into a subject we still really haven't touched upon yet, on this stage at least, during these days. And that is nuclear and medicine and the treatment of cancer. So please join us again at 12:45 when we have a really interesting panel coming up. See you later. Thank you.